In just about 6 weeks, a new school year should be underway, with our kids presumably back in the classroom. But with COVID-19 cases spiking in our state, how is that going to be safely possible? President Trump has even put out his opinion on it. On Monday, he tweeted, "Schools must open in the fall." And then today, he followed up with, "May cut off funding if not open." Well, tomorrow we're going to hear from Governor Little about reopening the schools in the Gem State. He's suggesting and expecting they suggest that they do reopen with certain guidelines. Guidelines, not mandates. Keep in mind, when it comes to education in the state, most decisions are made from the bottom up rather than the top down, meaning Idaho prides itself on local control over education. Still, those guidelines have to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is the State Board of Education. Kim Fields talked with the board's president today about what those guidelines might look like.
But Debbie, I think honestly, we're asking ourselves, and you've got to be asking yourself, how can we even make this happen? How can kids go to school and safely social distance and not have the potential of becoming infected from one another?
Well, I think that question, there's really two parts to that. One is I do believe that our schools can safely get kids back into a classroom setting. As far as the transmission and infection, I'll leave that to science. But schools have been thinking through these types of issues. We know that we don't have every answer out there, and certainly this framework we're putting forth is not exhaustive, and it's not a legal opinion for that matter. But what it does is help navigate some of these issues. And we're hearing from around the state, families want to get back, teachers want to get back with students, and most of the operational aspects of day-to-day school life can be satisfied in a way that does protect the safety of students and staff.
What does happen, Debbie, if a student tests positive, or a teacher or a janitor or a bus driver? Does it look like school would then be canceled for 14 days? What are your guidelines suggesting when it comes to that?
Well, we're certainly not recommending any type of blanket decision making where you've got a second grade teacher in one of your schools in one part of your district. Therefore, that means every student and every employee is out for the next 2 weeks. Working with central and local health districts, we know that these decisions need to be made situationally, and that appropriate decisions are made for that particular case.
Okay, so you guys can't say right now, because again, I think that's a burning question a lot of parents have. What happens if I send my kid back and someone tests positive? What happens then?
The what's next is there's some direction in the framework that the governor is going to talk about, and it gives categories and directions of if this, then that.
I'm trying to think of a typical classroom, 25 to 30 children. So how do we socially distance within the classroom? Are plans in place for that, I would imagine?
Again, recommendations, nothing mandated. Spreading out desks in a room. If you've got a smaller classroom, moving it to a larger space, limiting the numbers of students that go to recess at the same time or go to lunch. One of the things that you are not going to see in there is any mandate or any directive on the wearing of masks. We've been asked that a lot. Will our students or faculty, are they going to be forced or required to wear masks? You will not see any indication of that in the state framework. That is 100% locally decided.
Have you gotten any pushback from teachers from districts saying, hey, hold the phone, I don't want to jeopardize myself. I don't want to put myself in that position?
Absolutely. I think the contract issue with employees is one of our most critical and elusive questions that's out there. Clearly, vulnerable staff are more anxious and more concerned about how the school district is going to protect them and those that they return home to. And there are some suggestions on how to do that.
Should I expect my children to have their temperature taken before entering a school, or hand sanitizer or hand washing? What might that look like?
I'm glad that you brought up the taking of temperatures. School districts have a variety of opinions on how and if they want to do that. And frankly, a lot of it has to do with the supply of thermometers and the amount of time. It would be very time intensive to be able to do that. The critical partner in all of this, schools, they can do a lot, but they cannot do everything. Parents, guardians, grandparents, They are going to be a priority partner in all of this. And the recommendation is for parents to take the temperature of their children prior to getting on the bus or leaving home. And if it's 100.1, you stay home. You leave your child home until that temperature goes down.
What about transportation? What is that going to look like? Again, socially distancing on busing, Debbie.
If physical distancing was a requirement, which it is not, again, we're leaving that to districts to figure out, they would be running their bus routes 8 hours a day. And so I think that is going to be one of those areas where the districts are going to do their due diligence. They're going to have a good faith effort, and they're going to be very reasonable about how they get students to school.
So bottom line, it sounds like, Debbie, for parents just like me, we have a lot of burning questions still, but just hold tight and wait for guidance from your local school district.
The most reliable source for information about what school is going to look like in your district is coming right from your own school. And then I think a word for all of us is that we're all going to need to be a little patient with each other. We're building this as we go, and there are some things we're not going to get right and other things we're going to do very well. But finding that place in the middle to just have some patience, I think, is going to pay off for all of us.
Well, if it's a local decision and the city of Boise maintains their mask mandate in public buildings, you'd have to assume that would include public schools. So we'll see how that plays out. We're just 6 weeks away about that from school starting in the Boise School District. Another guideline from the board districts should make online learning available to families who want to keep their kids home. And a lot of you have asked, could a school district get sued if a student or staff member comes down with COVID-19? Critchfield says that's a priority issue for districts and one the governor and the legislature are having conversations about right now. And it's something we hope to have some sort of answer to tomorrow.